Thank you, Izzy. As we've been talking to people over the last few weeks, it's become clearer that this stage of lockdown, or at least the last few weeks of it, have been probably the hardest for many people. Any novelty that there might have been had in staying at home and having more time and less pressure of the norms of everyday life has quickly worn off. Trying to work out what we are and aren't meant to be doing has been confusing and, let's face it, exhausting. And spending so long for some of us with limited contact with other people or physical contact with other people, including our church family, has been incredibly difficult, emotionally, spiritually draining. And against that background, the announcement that the Prime Minister made earlier in the week, where he outlined some of the measures that they're taking to kind of ease lockdown a little bit and allow us to do a bit more, I imagine that came as good news for many of us. Finally, we can begin to have people in our homes again. Finally, we're going to see our high streets returning to a little bit more of normality, be able to go out and have something to eat or go and have a drink in a pub. And finally, maybe, possibly, we might be able to get together with our church family once again. I say maybe because we're still waiting for the government to actually publish the official guidelines to go along with that announcement and telling us what actually we can and can't do. And even after that, there's a huge amount of work, as you can imagine, which still needs to be done before we'll be able to even begin considering opening things up again or getting back to any sort of sense of normality. Over the last few weeks, we and the deacons have been trawling or begun to trawl through an absolute mountain of paperwork that's been provided by different people with all the different details that need to be taken into account. There's the government's own guidance for the safe use of places of worship during a pandemic. There's their guidance on meeting people outside your household. There's support for businesses and self-employed people when it comes to cleaning in a non-healthcare setting. There's the guidance on cleaning historic services, which we need to take into account. And then there's the advice from the BU, the essential guidance on opening churches up again that they've offered us. There's the guidance on churches as employers, which we need to take into account. There's 17 thrilling pages on the legal issues for churches surrounding coronavirus, and at least 14 pages of risk assessment that we need to be able to fill in before anything happens at all. And all these are essential. Of course they are, and they're helpful in some ways, and we're grateful for them. But the danger, it seems, is that in our rush to get back to normal as quickly as we possibly can, the danger is we might miss the opportunity to pause, to stop and seek God and ask the question, what do you want, God? These things tell us what we could be doing, but what should we be doing as we look to the next stage of our church life together? What do you want our priorities, our focus to be as we walk with each other and the community around us, trying to recover from the impact of this pandemic? And it may be that the answer to that is to go back to doing many of the things that we were doing before. Maybe that is what God wants. But it may be that actually God wants us to use this enforced break to lead us in a different direction entirely. And because of that, over the next few weeks, we are going to be trying to reflect on how we might seek God together as a church and some of the things that we need to be thinking about as we try and do that. It's a responsibility that, because we're a Baptist church, doesn't just fall to Julia and me or the deacons or the leaders. Actually, it's a responsibility which falls to all of us. We're all responsible for coming before God together and seeking Him and asking Him to lead us and speak to us. Over the next few weeks, as I say, we'll be letting you know how you can engage in that process and trying to provide you with some resources and tools to help you do that. The first step is a questionnaire, which most of you, if you're on the church email, will be receiving either later today or tomorrow. And that provides an opportunity to reflect on some of the experience of online church and church as it has been happening during lockdown, because of course we've tried to keep functioning in as many ways as possible, but also a chance to look ahead and maybe think about some of the lessons that we might have learned and what we can be carrying forward, and how maybe you feel God has already been speaking to you about what our church should look like in the next step. So as I say, you'll receive that. It'll also be available on the website. Do go and fill that in. Take some time, pray over it, and please do send that back to us, because we really would value your input as a way of getting our discussion and our prayers going. But we're also going to be using this time on a Sunday morning to think about some of these things. In order to do that, we're going to be reflecting together on the 5 values that have been put together by the Baptist Union, or Baptist Together, as it's now known. These values are going to appear on the screen now. Are seeking to be a spirit-led community, feeling like one team, embracing adventure, inspiring others, and sharing a hunger for God's coming kingdom. And these were values that were initially written for Baptists Together as a way of drawing together all the churches that form the Baptist Union. But it seems to us that they also form a good starting place for our own reflections on our life as a church together. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be taking these one at a time each Sunday, and just talking a little bit more about each one, and trying to draw some inspiration from the Bible as well, reading the stories, particularly of the early believers and the people of Israel, and trying to see what we can learn from them and their own walk with God, often through difficult times. I'm aware that not all of you watching this are part of our church normally. You might have another church that you normally go to as well. If that's the case, you might feel like this isn't a conversation you can be part of. And we understand that, but we hope that actually we might be able to provide something which you can take back into your own churches. I'm sure they are having very similar discussions to the ones that we are. So hopefully this might still be useful to you. And if you're watching this and you're not part of any church at the moment, then we encourage you to stick with us as well, because actually we'd value hearing your voice in this process, and especially what's been helpful to you or not helpful to you, and how you can speak to us as we go forward. So do stick with it as we try and engage with God together.